going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to more C4, and today we're continuing our draft preview for the Philadelphia Eagles. A couple days ago, we broke down the tight ends because it does seem like writing's on the wall for Dallas Goedert as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's look at some tight ends that I think fit that Dallas Goedert mold, not just big slot wide receivers, but the guys that can block. We broke down about 5 names. I threw a couple of my sleepers in there, and I said I'm going to do it for every position that I think's a priority position for the Philadelphia Eagles. And in today's video, we're combining two because I want to get all these videos out before the draft begins next week. Today, we're looking at Stoutland U candidates. We're going to look at offensive tackles and interior linemen. Obviously, that right guard position is the most uncertain for the Philadelphia Eagles. You could probably say swing tackle is number 2, but for that right guard spot, it is going to be Tyler Steen as it stands. And then we traded CJGJ to the Houston Texans to bring in, certainly would be up there with reclamation projects for Jeff Stoutland, bringing over Kenyon Green, who arguably was the worst tackle in the league last season. But you're getting a guy that's as old, like the same age as some of the players that we're going to talk about here in today's video. So maybe there's some upside there, but there's a big question mark. Who is going to replace Mekhi Becton? And the Philadelphia Eagles have tipped their hand just a little bit. If you looked at the top 30 visits, they've been bringing in a lot of linemen, a lot of tackles in particular, which I think has been a little surprising. Not surprising from the standpoint, like that's how Howie Roseman wants to build this team. But I feel like, Mailata, you got Lane Johnson, who seemingly wants to play for another 3 seasons. Like maybe we don't need to prioritize a tackle this season. And I think any tackle that we do draft, and some of the guys that we are going to talk about, I think they have to be able to come in right away and put their name in the mix for that right guard competition as we start training camp. So we're going to break down the tackles first, and then we're going to go to the guards because I think the tackles are, if you're looking at those 2 positions, guard seems the most important right now. And let's meet 10 candidates, 5 tackles, 5 guards that I think could enter Jeff Stoutland U and thrive. So what is the benchmark for a high-end tackle? 3 of the 5 tackles I'm going to break down will likely have to be selections at pick 32. Now, if we trade back to a team that's picking within the top 10 of the second round, which is certainly a probability, maybe they could be in that area code. But generally speaking, for high-end tackles, here's what the Philadelphia Eagles like to look for. We have Lane Johnson and Andre Dillard. Athletically speaking, very good for the class. Lane Johnson's very good, might even be underselling it. Lane Johnson's one of the most athletic tackles in the history of the NFL. And Andre Dillard was not bad, 9.76. That's top 50 of all time. And I will say, looking through all these little scores, just to try to see, is there something that sticks out? One drill that sticks out that the Eagles seemingly try to prioritize. Almost everybody had an elite score in the broad jump. Now, broad jump, as part of this RAS score system, it measures your explosiveness. And I found out that, let's just see, here are the names. Here are the names that have Andre Dillard, Lane Johnson, Big V, Trevor Keegan, Tyler Steen, Cam Jurgens, Jack Driscoll. All of these guys had broad jumps that were some of the best in their class. So, that might not mean anything. That could just be purely coincidental. I just thought it was something that was very interesting. But generally speaking, if Philly is looking for a tackle early, they have got to be a great athlete. With that, we're going to start at tackle number 5, and that is Ariante Ursery from Minnesota. You want to talk about an athlete? Boy, oh boy, we got one. Take a look here at Ariante Ursery at number 5. Athletically speaking, here's something for you. So I took Lane Johnson, Andre Dillard, and Jordan Mailata's RAS scores. Took the average 9.46. Ursery is right on that line. The broad jump stood out. He has elite speed grade, and having an elite speed grade at 331 pounds makes him incredibly interesting. The arm length at 33 inches checks out. And when you look at the scouting report on Ursery, all the buzzwords that you want to see for a Jeff Stoutland product is there. He has the size, check mark. Strength, check mark. Movement in space, check mark. Footwork could be better, but not a weakness. Jeff Stoutland always has said, footwork. I almost feel like that's that's why I think he likes some of these guys that were former tight ends, former basketball players, because they just have natural footwork that's something that he doesn't have to work on. He could just work on strictly technique and getting these guys ready to buy into his system. My issue with Ursery and why he's not higher, because I think he's probably going to fall. He's going to be a top 50 pick when all is said and done. But I think for the Philadelphia Eagles, if you're getting a tackle, long term, is it going to be Lane Johnson's successor? Maybe. Are you going to be able to contribute as a swing tackle this season? Maybe. I think you have to come in and be able to compete for that right guard spot. And Ursery has 3 straight seasons starting only at left tackle. Second team All Big Ten in 2023. First team All Big Ten in 2024. A second team All American. He was one of the best tackles in football. But it would be I don't know, it's not Madden. You can't just assume that a guy can come in just because, at that size profile, 6'6", 330 with 33-inch arms, there's like, all right, Mekhi Becton type size at right guard. It should work, but it doesn't always work. You can't just assume that a left tackle that's only played left tackle is going to be able to quickly pick up a right guard spot. So that's why I have him a little bit lower on the list. Tackle number 4 is Jalen Travis. I love seeing him take an official visit for the Philadelphia Eagles because I think above all the day 3 prospects at tackle, he's projected right now to go in the 5th, 6th round. He certainly could have an argument to be the best Jeff Stoutland U candidate that exists in this draft class. When you look at the athletic profile of Jalen Travis, this is exactly the kind of guy you want to swing on day 3. Gigantic human being, 6'7", 340. Has elite in the explosion grade, which is exactly kind of maybe the attribute testing drills that the Philadelphia Eagles really like to see. The speed grade is good. You'd love to see maybe a little bit better agility grade, but at almost 6'8" and 340 pounds, not too many guys like that are going to be able to move sideline to sideline in a short space very, very quickly. This is a guy that has good footwork for his size, and you get him out in space, it's going to look like Mekhi Becton. It's going to look like some of the highlights that Mekhi Becton had when he gets on a linebacker at the second level and literally throws his ass in the dirt 5 yards downfield. That is the kind of capabilities, that is the kind of upside that you can have here with Jalen Travis. And the reason why I have him ahead of, say, an Ariante Urseries, again, that's pick 32 if you want to get him, most likely. Someone like Jalen Travis projected to be a day 3 selection. There's just different level of expectations. And Travis could come in and maybe, compete for swing tackle I'm not necessarily starting reps, but like to be that lineman that dresses. And I think with his profile, the assumption is, athlete, gigantic human being, maybe this is a guy that they could view, especially with the interest of them bringing him in on a top 30 visit, as a Mekhi Becton 2.0. Worked with Mekhi Becton, we took this huge tackle and moved him inside. While you look at Jalen Travis, a lot of similarities to his game. So I just think at the price point, I'd be a little bit more interested in Travis coming in as a developmental swing tackle, developmental tackle, maybe a developmental guard at somewhere down the line versus Ursery, who'd be a lot more expensive as far as draft capital is concerned. My tackle number 3 is Logan Brown from Kansas. He's a little bit older of a player. He's a former 5-star recruit, but he was in the same class that had Evan Neal, who was a first-round pick for the Giants, Darnell Wright, who was a first-round pick for the Bears, and Kenyon Green, who was a first-round pick of the Texans and is now a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. Shout out Dane Brugler for putting that all together. Logan Brown comes with a little bit more uncertainty. I think stylistically, this is a guy that if I'm looking at someone that we can kind of keep on the back end of the roster and develop to truly be a successor for Lane Johnson, that is more in the mold of a Logan Brown. I'm not looking at a guy that could be your, maybe a tackle, maybe a guard. I think he would be the long-term play to succeed. Lane potentially has gigantic wingspan, almost 34-inch arms, has the elite explosion grade, former 5-star. Like, that is something that Howie Roseman has certainly, I'm not going to say targeted, but I almost feel like that's a tiebreaker for the Philadelphia Eagles. If you were a former highly regarded recruit, they're going to kind of prioritize that over not so. We saw it with Will Shipley. We saw it with, Isaac Seumalo was a former 5-star recruit. Like, if you look at the amount of former 5-star and 4-stars, top high school prospects, that's like a lot of the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's not always the case for some teams. And I feel like that is just, whatever intangible that is something that Howie Roseman definitely at minimum has circled on his scouting reports when he is in the draft room. And I think when you take a look at Logan Brown, there are a lot of question marks, man. He played since 2019 at Wisconsin, had like 3 years he wasn't starting, got beat out, and then eventually transferred to Kansas, where in 2023 missed some games due to injury. 2024 last year started at right tackle, ended up being second team all Big 12, but missed another game, I believe the final game of the season there, due to an injury. So there is some inconsistencies, there is some concerns, there is a reason that you look at a tackle with this type of profile, with this type of pedigree, and the expectation right now is that he's going to go in that 4th, 5th, maybe even Jalen Travis range of a 5th, 6th round selection. But I think with the athletic profile and his background, you have a player that is good out in space. You have another guy where a thing that constantly comes up in his scouting reports is good footwork. And he's not a gigantic human being. 6'6", 311 is pretty much a prototypical size for a starting tackle in the NFL. But good footwork, good athleticism, needs some refining, but you would like to assume with his profile that ceiling is there. I think he certainly makes a very interesting candidate for Stoutland U. Tackle number 2 on our list is Donovan Jackson. It should almost just say lineman 2. As he's a player that, honestly, a lot of people thought was going to be a guard. Was first team All Big Ten in 2023 at guard. Only started at guard. Started at guard this season for Ohio State, but due to injury, had to kick out the left tackle. And I think that's what made his tape and what has improved his draft stock so much is that there was not really any drop-off whatsoever. Guard and or tackle, he was playing at a very high level. He was a first-team All-American, first-team All-Big Ten. And I think with that versatility, there's a reason why Philadelphia brought him in on a top 30 visit, because he is exactly the type of lineman that they love to bring in. The more you can do, the more versatility to your game, that's a checkbox right there for the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're looking for a guy that can be your sixth lineman, if you're looking for a guy that can come in and compete for a guard spot, and then in a pinch, if an injury, you just kind of shuffle a guy over, and you have that confidence that you have players, like we've seen that with Juergens, where you can play guard and center. We've seen that before with Tyler Steen, who really knows where he stands right now in the pecking order, but there's guard tackle versatility there. So you'd be able to get that with Donovan Jackson, even though at 6'3.5", it's a little bit small for a tackle in today's NFL. The arm length at 33.5 is outstanding. I don't think there's really any concern. Most people do consider him right now as a tackle prospect, but the fact of the matter is that this is a guy that for the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023, was one of the best guards in all of college football. And then last year in 2024, started at guard, played at a very high level, and then out of nowhere was like, oh man, injury concerns. Just decimated with injuries. Josh Simmons, very good tackle, maybe the best tackle in this year's class, goes down. Jackson slides over to left tackle, still plays at a ridiculously high level, en route for Ohio State to go win a national championship. First team All-American, first team Big Ten. This is a guy that you want on your team. This is a guy, if you need a lineman, I honestly think this might be a perfect fit for a team like maybe the Houston Texans, late first round, that need multiple positions across the offensive line. But if Donovan Jackson goes to the Eagles, I'm not going to necessarily lose any sleep about it, because I think he's the perfect player for the state of the Eagles offensive line. If they do think, and Jeff Stoutland does think, that, hey, this guy could be a tackle someday. Well, there you go. Someday, whenever that day is, when Lane Johnson says, I'm done, I'm good. Hopefully after a couple more Super Bowls, you're going to be fine there. But right now, he's a guy, guard tackle, that can come in and compete for that right guard spot. And I think that is the biggest question mark right now for the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. Good bench press, which is not always common with a guy with long arms. The explosion grade prerequisite ticks that box off in spades. And with his athleticism and strength, you're just getting a pro-ready player that I don't think there's a lot in his game outside of, the technical side of things that Jeff Stoutland's going to be able to coach up that makes me feel anything other than Donovan Jackson is an incredibly high floor and honestly high ceiling prospect on the offensive line. Tackle number one is maybe not my number one tackle, but I think he's the tackle the Philadelphia Eagles have done the most homework on, and I'm going to almost kind of justify why, this could be our first round pick if we take a tackle in the first round, and why it might not be all doom and gloom. And that is Josh Conerly, offensive tackle from Oregon, came in on a top 30 visit. And it seems like for whatever reason, which I'm going to hopefully try to explain, Jeff Stoutland has his eye on the Oregon tackle. Now when you look at his athletic card here, 8.84, it's a little bit lower than what we'd like to expect. He's a little bit shorter at 6'4.5", but much like Donovan Jackson, when you kind of throw that as, look at the arm length at 33.5, it kind of counterbalances that a little bit. The elite speed grade certainly stands out. Explosion grade's a little bit lower, like the broad jump that has stood out. His broad jump wasn't anything spectacular, but like overall the explosion grade is in line. But I think the biggest thing for him is just he looks like, I don't know, I haven't even looked at the full report. I know he's a 5-star recruit and was a tackle, but he looks like one of those guys that converted from tight end to play tackle. There's just a different way that these guys move when they're out in space, when they're in their pass sets, where it's just like, it's a different type of nimbleness, a different type of agility. And you definitely get that out of Josh Conerly. I think that play strength needs to get a little bit more improved. I think he's one of those guys that you definitely don't want to throw the wolves right away, which is a luxury. A lot of times when you're drafting a tackle in the first 2 rounds, you want to throw them to the wolves. You want these guys to compete. And I think like in Josh Conerly's case, I think he's a tackle. He's never played guard. He's been 2 times season starting, back-to-back years at Oregon, left tackle only. He's never played guard. So for this exercise of breaking down tackles for the Eagles, I've kind of wanted to prioritize guys that maybe your Lane Johnson successor down the line, but I'd love to see them and almost kind of want it to be a priority that they enter their name into the right guard competition to start training him. I don't think you get that with Josh Conerly. I think Conerly would be the ultimate luxury pick of he's going to be a swing tackle. He at best will be the depth swing tackle, and then heaven forbid there's an injury to a Mailata or to a Lane Johnson, then you have a highly regarded pick that is eventually planned to be the successor at tackle that could step in and fill into that role. However, I don't necessarily know at that price point for Connerly where I would be surprised if we didn't get him at 32, if he would be available almost at any pick. Like, he's a guy that probably would be a top 5, top 10 pick in the second round if he does slip out of the first round. But I think, with the Kansas City Chiefs picking right in front of the Philadelphia Eagles, like, they're going to be very interested in a tackle. So he's going to certainly be in that mix. But I think the fact that Philadelphia has shown a lot of interest in him, it does make sense. And this is kind of justifying maybe that interest because he is kind of in line, measurable-wise, and his play style for someone that would enter Jeff Stoutland U. The only two players I'm not going to talk about for tackles, you kind of route this one up. We have Josh Simmons and Armand Membu. I think both those guys are probably my top 2 tackles in this year's class, but there's a 5% chance that, there's probably a 0% chance that Membu's going to fall. He's an elite athlete, 330 pounds, put like a 9'9", something like that is like the perfect Lane Johnson successor, and I think he could come in and play guard. He could be a trade-up candidate, but I feel like both him and Josh Simmons, who I think healthy, clean bill of health, as long as the medicals get checked out, could be, in my opinion, from what I saw, might be the best tackle in this year's class. There's just not a lot of probability for them to be available for the Philadelphia Eagles outside of a trade-up scenario, so I didn't really want to mention them. But I will also squeeze in here that Josh Simmons and Armand Membu are the top 2 tackles and would love to see them come to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, there's not too many times. It happens. A lot of times when I'm just watching college football, I have like a little notebook and I'll just kind of be like, LSU 72. That's like, I just kind of circle that. Like, that guy looks kind of good. And I'll be honest, last year, 2023, everyone was, I was looking at Jaden Daniels, looking at some of the skill position players at LSU, and just happened, every time you do that, there's other things that will catch your eye. And I'll say 72 was making as many plays on that LSU line, and that's plays, right? We're not just talking about consistent blocks and stuff like that. I was just talking about pancakes, throwing guys down, pulling, being a mauler, getting to the second level. I was seeing 72 make as many plays as Will Campbell, who is projected to be a top 10 pick this year. Now, obviously, apples and oranges, tackle to a interior lineman, but I was like, this Dillinger guy is pretty damn solid, and I was very surprised coming into this draft cycle, he was UDFA. And then now, after his pro day, where it's 9.76 RAS, 33-inch arms, he's kind of bumped up a little bit right now, currently projected to be a 6th, 7th round pick. If that holds up, this is my value interior lineman pick of the draft for the Philadelphia Eagles. You have a guy that can maul, you have a guy that can get out in space, you have a guy with prototypical arm length, you have a guy with solid footwork, and you have a guy with elite positional versatility. As a true freshman, played left tackle and left guard. Second year, played some center. Third, 2023, fourth year, 2024, started at left guard. This is a guy that can play all over the line. This is the kind of guy that if you're looking for a day 3 pick that you want to have barely make the roster, which, let's be honest, that's what those guys usually do, with a comfortability to play pretty much that is the ultimate depth lineman. And the fact that he has the athleticism, the fact that I think he has some pretty good tape for as much as I could evaluate offensive lineman tape, I would love Garrett Dillinger as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, especially at the price point of a 6th or 7th round selection. Offensive guard number 4 I'm going to look at is Bryce Cabledew. Now, he was a tackle at Kansas, but with his frame likely at 6'4", just under 310 pounds, 33-inch arms, likely will project to kick inside as a guard, and this is the kind of player that, again, athletic, explosive, good footwork, good movement, needs a little bit kind of figured out on the technical side. Yes, sir, sign up for Jeff Stoutland U, a 9.4 RAS score, and I think when you look at the explosive grade that stood out, you look at the bench press which stood out, that speed grade, if they had the 10-yard split, likely would also be elite. I'm seeing a lot to love. I suppose, just because I did the comparison for tackles and what Philadelphia likes to look for, comparing Lane Johnson and Andre Dillard, well, what about some interior linemen? Cam Jurgens and Steen, most 2 recent players that we've drafted to kind of compete for those positions. 9.66 for Jurgens, 9.92 for Steen. I'm comparing them as guards here. Obviously, Jurgens is a center, but we played him at guard. Steen brings that versatility guard tackle, but we've played him at guard. So you want to try to find some prospects that kind of meet along the lines of that. And I think Cabledew, I think looking at Garrett Dillinger, both those guys tick those boxes off. But with someone like Cabledew, it's kind of like the same discussion point of Josh Connerly, where it's like, all right, well, he's a tackle. He's only ever played tackle. It's not Madden. Can he make the transition inside to guard? But I like to think with the athletic profile, I like to think with his footwork, with his movement skills, with his arm strength, and being able to, once he gets his hands on guys, they ain't going anywhere. I think for a guy that's currently projected to go 5th, 6th round, right in that Jalen Travis range, I think he would be a very interesting get for the Eagles. Guard number 3 is Caleb Rogers, guy that is a tackle convert. At least had to play a little bit of guard his final year at Texas Tech. Probably saw the writing on the wall that if he wants to play in the NFL, he likely will be inside, so why not make that move at the college level? He was a member of Bruce Feldman's Freaks list, which you always love to see that, and he certainly tested out as such. 903 in the RAS, have some size concerns, but outside of that, a great speed score, elite agility score, and the explosion grade, which is a priority for Stoutland U. He certainly ticks that box off. You look at the scouting report on Caleb Rogers, a 4-year starter at Texas Tech, lots of football. I'm not going to say necessarily pro-ready, but he has enough experience to be able to bring that into Stoutland U. He's going to be one of the more experienced students in Stoutland U. Explosiveness, check. Nimbleness, check. Footwork, check. Get his hands on you. You're not going anywhere, check. But needs to be refined technically, especially for a guy that's primarily played tackle and has just started the, maybe transition to be a full-time guard. That is a perfect ball of clay for Jeff Stoutland to get his hands on and develop. Now, a little bit more expensive price point than some of the other players we're talking about. He's currently projected to be a 4th, 5th round pick. But we got a bunch of picks in that 5th round. And come Caleb Rogers, if he's a guy that we could see maybe be the inverse of some of the players that we've been talking about. Guys that are tackles that I think we could swing into guard. I think Rogers could be competition for Tyler Steen, where Steen has kind of been a guard swing tackle. I think you get that same kind of versatility out of Caleb Rogers. He'd be one to look out for on day 3. Put on to my guard number 2. Guard number 2 and number 1 on my list are expensive. They're not going to be affordable. If Philly wants them, there's a strong likelihood, pick 32, or we have to bring it up because it is a very possible situation. We trade back for one of the top 10, 15 picks of the second round. They're going to be in that range. These are not guys that are going to tumble down the draft boards. Gray Zabel is currently projected to be a first, second round pick. Brings elite versatility, was playing right guard, right tackle, left tackle in his time at North Dakota State, was a consensus All-American, little short in the arms with 32-inch arms. That's why most people think he's going to play inside. Dane Brugler has him graded as a center. I think Daniel Jeremiah has him graded as a guard tackle. I think in this scenario, he would be a guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think at the investment point that he would cost us likely pick 32, he would have to be a guy that they just circle and say, yep, that's the guy that's going to be able, there's going to be no competition for that right guard. This guy's going to come in and immediately be able to compete for that. I think as far as a mover is concerned, out in space, he is almost as good as any tackle in this year's class. So how does that translate to the guard position? Well, how about a team like Philadelphia with, Landon Dickerson and probably more so Mekhi Becton, guys that we love getting to the second level, hat on a hat, and leading for Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts in the run game. That is a skill set that Zabel will be able to bring in spades. And I think kind of the knock against him is going to be mass if he moves inside to guard. Right now, it's something that kind of always comes with most tackles from small schools. How are they going to be able to handle NFL size, speed, strength? Are they going to be able to have that anchor to take on some of the best defensive ends? Would he be able to hang with a Brian Burns? Would he be able to hang with, Micah Parsons, on the edge? That is a concern, but you can kind of match that a little bit if you kick him on the inside. I just think the big knock for Gray Zabel, while I think he's a perfect candidate for Stoutland U, and that's kind of the prospects I'm highlighting in this video, is that price point going to be feasible for the Philadelphia Eagles? Are they going to want maybe a little bit more value later on at that guard spot? Because Zabel would require likely pick 32 if we wanted to go ahead and bring him in. That is if he's still on the board. He could go much earlier than pick 32 and it wouldn't be a reach. So certainly someone that would be a perfect fit for Stoutland U, and that's why I have him at number 2. But the likelihood of Philly getting him is certainly uncertain. My number 1 guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, number 1 candidate for Jeff Stoutland U on the interior is, exclude the Howie Roseman Georgia Bulldog. We're always drafted Bulldogs memes. Tate Ratledge is a very, very interesting prospect. He is a guy that's played a lot of SEC football, won a lot of games, which is something that Howie Roseman likes. I think when you look at his athletic profile, insanity, 9.96 RAS. This is one of the most athletic guards we've ever seen. Elite speed, elite explosion, SEC Georgia Bulldog winning program background. This is a pro, this, you couldn't have drawn up a more prototypical, perfect, top of the board lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles to consider. He has the pedigree that Howie Roseman likes. He has the athletic profile that Jeff Stoutland likes. He's an absolute dog, which is what Nick Sirianni likes. Like all 3 levels, all 3 people a player has to impress, Tate Ratledge has in spades. I think the knock against him is a little bit shorter arm length. I think there's not a lot of versatility. He's been straight up a right guard since day one, so he's not, again, 6'6", 310 like that. Could just have easily been a tackle. I believe he was recruited as an offensive tackle. So it's just, there's not as much versatility there. But I think for a guy that right now is projected to go in the second round, I think comfortably, based off of some of the, and this is going to sound incredibly stupid because it's not really even a talking point, but based off of the trillion mock drafts that I've done, like he's a guy that's reliably still there in the second round for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think that might be a much more interesting price point for them to try to address that interior. Now, lack of versatility certainly kind of hurts the value a little bit because, if you do bring him in, you're going to have 3 guards fighting over a guard spot. Now, I think Tyler Steen could probably be considered our swing tackle. And then you have Ratledge and Kenyon Green kind of battling out there for that guard spot. But it's, I think all these guys, every single name we've talked about and how they relate to that right guard spot, it is in relation to what Philly thinks they got in Kenyon Green. If they think they got something in Kenyon Green and they're going to grade him and value him as, maybe a guy that this year, in comparison to all these players, would be a second, third round pick, like maybe they're not going to be hot pressed on that right guard spot. I've seen a lot of the players that they brought in are not necessarily guys that have a lot of guard experience. They're swing tackles. They're developmental tackles. But if we do want to look at guard, there is none more perfect prospect that ticks off everything that we want in a player than Tate Ratledge. And I think in the second round, we're not talking about a perfect player that have to be picked in the first round. If he's there in the second round, I wouldn't lose any sleep over that. And he's a gigantic human being, would fit the mold of, 6'6", 310. And then you have Mailata, 6'8", 350. Dickerson, 6'6", 350. Lane Johnson, 6'6", 330. Like, just continue to stack up gigantic human beings across the offensive line. It makes sense. It would work out. So there you go, fellas. That is my breakdown of top 5 offensive tackles and top 5 guards that I think would be great candidates to enter Jeff Stoutland U. What do you guys think? Are your rankings a little bit different? Who would be your dream pick? Would it be someone maybe we didn't even talk, like if Membu? Would you hate it if Philly traded up for Membu? Would you hate it if we traded up for a Josh Simmons, the top 2 tackles that I just think were unattainable to even talk about in this video? But would that trade up scenario, could you live with that? Could you not live with that? Because who knows? You're just drafting for a guy that, may not retire for the next 3 seasons in Lane Johnson. An interesting talking point when it relates to tackles, and it's weird that that's kind of been the priority for some of these top 30 visits for the Philadelphia Eagles, when I think we much more need to be concerned about, if we're looking at tackles, guys that can come in and compete for that right guard spot. So love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, the first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. Our next video, we're going to be breaking down some D linemen that I think would be great fits and potential replacements in the style of a Milton Williams, and guys that can complement Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. I'm going to hope to have that out before the end of the weekend, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Until next time, it's your boy C4 saying peace out, love ya,